Hi guys, I'm Kalila Reynolds. It's now time for Money Mondays, brought to you in partnership with Proven Wealth. Today I'm reviewing the offer by Eppley Caribbean Property Fund, which opened on Friday, June 28. It's scheduled to close on July 12, but you know how it goes. If there's a lot of interest, it could close sooner, or they could extend it beyond that date if they don't get the anticipated take-up. This is, after all, one of the larger offers in recent times. They're seeking to raise at least $4.5 billion. That's 34 million US, with an option to increase it to 6.5 billion or 50 million US. Technically, this isn't an IPO, an initial public offer, because this stock is already listed on both the Barbados and Trinidad and Tobago stock exchanges, but it is new to Jamaica. They're calling it an SPO, Special Public Offer. So first, what are they offering? 97 million shares at $46.18 a share, and the prospectus doesn't state what the minimum purchase is. If I find out, I'll let you know. Now, who is this company and why do they want our money? Eppley Caribbean Property Fund is actually a Barbadian company that owns several commercial properties in that island. They previously had a different name, but they were bought out by the Jamaican company Eppley last year. They make money primarily from rental income. The buildings they own house stuff like shopping malls and supermarkets, and their tenants are reputable and recognizable names, mostly with long-term leases. But things haven't been so great for the company. They've fallen on bad times because of the decline in the Barbados economy over the past 10 years. Property values in Barbados have fallen off significantly, and one of their prime locations on the waterfront in Bridgetown isn't so prime anymore, as businesses are moving to newer, more exciting business districts. So Eppley bought this company last year, and they've already started turning things around. They've increased earnings by 60% by making some strategic moves like renegotiating leases. Now they want to take it to the next level, and one of their strategies is to diversify into other countries. Obviously, there's a risk to having all your properties in one country. We've seen how that has hurt them in the past. So they want to use some of the $4.5 billion from this SPO to buy 3 properties in Jamaica and 2 more in Barbados. They've actually already acquired some of these properties, and they'll be using some of the funds to pay off that loan. So the Jamaican properties are the Empire Building in Crossroads, Angels Industrial Estate in St. Catherine, and a warehousing and manufacturing facility on Marcus Garvey Drive. And the rest of the money they plan to use to buy even more properties all over the Caribbean, including Jamaica, Cayman, Guyana, Barbados, and Trinidad and Tobago. Now, as it relates to the Jamaican real estate market, you guys know where that's at right now. It's red hot. Property values are rising. Rent is ridiculously high. It's a seller's market. But Barbados, on the other hand, not so great. The Mia Mottley administration is trying to turn things around, but it's still very early days. They've taken a series of critical reforms. They have a new IMF agreement, and they just passed their first IMF test. From what I hear, there's a lot of optimism about Barbados, but like I said, it's still very early. Jamaica, for example, has had more than one IMF agreement. We passed the first test, second test, third test, but it gets progressively more difficult, and we've had challenges in the past and fallen off track. So I think if you're contemplating investing in this fund, a lot will depend on your confidence in the economic reforms in Barbados. So that's something that you should definitely do some research on. Even though they're diversifying into Jamaica, even after these purchases, nearly 80% of the assets will still be in Barbados. So that's a risk if that economy doesn't really turn things around as hoped. Now, I put this to the CEO of Eppley, Nicholas Scott, and CEO of lead broker NCB Capital Markets, Stephen Gooden, last week, and this is how they responded. How confident are you that things are going to turn around, because the economy has impacted property prices in Barbados?
So, Khalila, we're value investors. We believe you make returns by buying at a good value. And we were investing heavily in Jamaica in 2009 when people were saying, hey, there's an IMF program and et cetera. We're really happy we did, because all of us as Jamaicans have benefited from that appreciation. Now we're at a different point in the cycle, and we certainly like Jamaica, but we know a good deal when we see one. And as a Jamaican, it looks very familiar. Brand new government, IMF program, tax reform. debt restructuring being completed, at least half of it. This is, we think, reminiscent of Jamaica in 2009, and that's one of the reasons why a year ago Eppley decided to buy this fund, because we're taking the Jamaican experience that we had and we're seeking to replicate it in Barbados.
But Stephen, you know that these IMF programs aren't always successful. Jamaica's had several goes at it before, the current success.
But given the level and significance of the reforms that have been undertaken in Barbados, we are fairly bullish on Barbados as well. Since the IMF agreement has been signed, the macroeconomic fundamentals and the fiscal situation of the government has improved significantly, and it's our expectation that it will continue to improve to the point where we have even committed our own balance sheet to acquiring assets in Barbados.
So yeah, that's another way to look at it. There's risk, but there's also opportunity. Low property values mean they can acquire properties for cheap. And as the economy improves, which is what they're banking on, the values will rise significantly like they have in Jamaica. Now, another thing I also had concerns about upon reading the prospectus was the share price. It's selling at $46.18 per share. But when I checked on the other two stock markets where it's listed, that's significantly higher than what these same shares are going for there. In Barbados, the last traded price was the equivalent of $35.52 Jamaican. That's 30% less than this SPO price. And in Trinidad, these shares are selling for the equivalent of $32.65. That's 40% less than the offer price in Jamaica. Once again, I put that question to Nicholas Scott from Eppley, and this was his defense.
So the pricing is very simple in this case, because all we do is we own 6 properties. They're independently appraised, so experts come and value them twice a year. In this case, the most recent time was in March. And all the share price is the independently appraised value of the properties divided by the number of shares. You're right that in Trinidad and Barbados, the most recent trade is different, but as you said earlier, it hasn't really traded in Trinidad. And so that amount of thin volume means that those numbers aren't really comparable to holding it in a country like Jamaica where there's an active market.
According to the prospectus as well, the directors believe listing on the JSE will boost the share price. But there's also a clause in there that says if the shares continue to trade below their net asset value, the company will repurchase the shares. Now, one of the things in the pro column for this stock is the dividend policy. They plan to pay 75 to 100% of the income from the rent, after expenses and taxes, of course, in dividends annually. Last year, they paid out the equivalent of 84 million Jamaican dollars in dividends to their 2,000 shareholders. Now, there are 55 million shares. If you do the math, it works out to $1.52 per share. So if you had $50,000 worth of shares in this stock, you would have been paid about $2,300 in dividends. Well, guys, I hope this helps you make your decision. Once again, I'm not a licensed financial advisor, so please don't ask me for advice, but you can DM me for a referral. That's it for Money Mondays this week. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram, subscribe on YouTube, and if you found this information useful, share with a friend. Any questions? Comment below. I'm Kalila Reynolds. See you next week.